After I walked my 7-year-old daughter to her mom's car for weekend visitation, she slipped a note in my pocket. "Don't read until I'm gone." I waited 5 minutes. Opened it. "Dad, check under your bed tonight. Grandma hid something there yesterday." I rushed inside home. What I found made me call 911 immediately. The taillights of Kathy's Honda disappeared around the corner. I stood there, Jake Vaughn, 42 years old, high school chemistry teacher, and, crucially, weekend father. The October wind, sharp and unforgiving, cut through my thin jacket as I stared at the empty space where Emma had just been. That feeling of subtraction, that sudden, hollow space in my chest, was the cruelest leftover of the divorce. The custody arrangement, a document of cold, legal finality, dictated every other weekend, 2 weeks in summer, alternating holidays. A judge had decided how much time I got with my own child, a consequence of Bernice Wright's relentless, high-priced campaign to paint me as an unfit provider. Bernice, my ex-mother-in-law, had used her wealth and influence like a siege weapon, successfully stripping me of the life I'd built, the house, the stability, and nearly all my daily contact with my daughter. I shoved my hands into my pockets, ready to head back into the rented duplex, my small fortress of fragile order. That was when my fingers brushed paper. Emma's note. She'd pressed it into my palm during our goodbye hug. Her brown eyes, so much like mine, had met mine with an unusual, serious intensity. 7 years old, and already keeping secrets. The thought made my chest constrict painfully. She wasn't just being sneaky, she was being brave. I unfolded the paper. Emma's careful. Second, great handwriting emerged, a blend of neat print and hesitant curves. "Dad, check under your bed tonight. Grandma hid something there yesterday." My blood went cold. Bernice. Yesterday was Thursday. Kathy had texted, asking if Emma could stay an extra night with me, since she had a school event Friday morning closer to my place. I had agreed immediately. Any extra moment with Emma was precious. Kathy had dropped her off Wednesday evening and picked her up just an hour ago. Normal, unremarkable. Except, apparently Bernice had let herself in at some point. How the hell did she have a key? I was inside the duplex in seconds, the front door slamming behind me, the sound swallowed by the small space. My mind, usually organized by the predictable laws of chemical reactions, was now a cascade of panicked implications. Bernice had been in my house. My house, which I rented from a man named Stuart Bass. My small, 2-bedroom, 1-bath sanctuary that was one of the few things I had left. The hallway felt too long. My heart hammered against my ribs, a loud, erratic drumbeat against the silence. Bernice had hated me since day one, because I was a teacher, not an executive. Because I wasn't wealthy enough, or prestigious enough to meet her exacting standards. She hadn't just engineered the divorce. She had personally hired Clifford Whitaker, the most aggressive divorce attorney in 3 counties, to ensure I was financially crushed and marginalized as a father. But this felt different. More vicious. I reached my bedroom. The room was exactly as I had left it this morning. The bed made with the military precision I'd retained from a brief stint in the Army years ago. The dresser clear, except for a framed picture of Emma and me at the zoo. My nightstand held a lamp, and the well-worn textbook I was reading. I dropped to my knees, the carpet rough against my skin, and looked under the bed frame. Nothing visible at first. I grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand. Shining the beam into the dusty darkness, I saw it pushed far back against the wall. A black duffel bag I had never seen before. My hand trembled slightly as I pulled it out. It was heavy. Too heavy. The zipper was unlocked. I looked down at Emma's note, then at the bag, and took a deep, shuddering breath. I slowly pulled the zipper open. The beam of the flashlight illuminated plastic, wrapped bricks. Dozens of them. They were tightly packed, and through the clear wrapping, I could see white powder. My chemistry background was a curse in that moment. I didn't need forensic analysis. The distinctive texture and quantity told me everything. This was not user quantity. This was distribution amounts. This was enough to put me away for 20 years. Methamphetamine. Jesus Christ. I sat back on my heels, the shock giving way to icy clarity. Bernice Wright hadn't just tried to manipulate me. She had planted a major felony in my home. If the police found this during a random traffic stop, a wellness check, or any routine visit, my life was over. I would lose custody permanently. I would go to prison. This was the attempted murder of everything I had left in the world. But Emma had warned me. My 7-year-old daughter had risked her grandmother's wrath to save me. I forced myself to think. Think like the scientist I was. Logic over panic. I pulled out my phone, my hands steadier now, the adrenaline giving way to cold, pure calculation. I did not touch the bag again. Instead, I began to photograph it from multiple angles, time-stamped, showing exactly where I had found it. I photographed the underside of my bed frame, the dust patterns clearly showing where the bag had been pushed. I documented everything before I moved a single molecule. Then, and only then, did I pick up the phone and dial 911. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Jake Vaughn. I just found a large quantity of what appears to be methamphetamine hidden under my bed in my home. I need to report this immediately. There was a long, disbelieving pause on the other end. Sir, you're reporting that you found drugs in your own residence. Yes. I believe they were planted here to frame me. My 7-year-old daughter warned me. I haven't touched anything, except to pull the bag out enough to verify what it was. I need police here now to document this properly. Officers are on their way. Sir, please exit the residence and wait outside. I did. I stood in my driveway again, but this time, the cold wind felt irrelevant. The weight of the moment had eclipsed all else. I had just found a crime, and by calling it in, I had officially started a war. The shock of Emma's note had sent a cold wave through my system, replacing quiet sadness with hyper, alert focus. Now, standing on the curb of my rental, watching for the approaching police sirens, the cold became crystalline. I had initiated a chain reaction. If I had simply removed the drugs, Bernice would have planted more, or worse, found another way. By calling 911, I had made the threat public, forced a paper trail, and guaranteed that if I went down, it would be with my defense already on the record. But I still needed an anchor. Someone who wasn't the police and wasn't family. I called Joseph Law. Joe, a gray-haired physics teacher at the high school, was as steady as bedrock. He had been my friend and colleague for over a decade. Joe, it's Jake. I need you to come to my place right now. And bring your camera. A good one. Trust me, the police are coming, but I need you here first. Jake. What the hell happened? You sound like you just saw a reaction go supercritical. I'll explain when you get here. Just come, please. Fast. The sound of my own voice, tight and devoid of emotion, must have been enough. Joe didn't argue. He promised he would be there in less than 10 minutes. He arrived before the first squad car, parking sharply behind my small sedan. He took one look at my face, the careful, controlled neutrality that replaced my usual melancholy, and knew whatever it was bad. I quickly explained, keeping my voice low and efficient as I showed him the time-stamped photos on my phone. The duffel bag, the white powder, Emma's note. That evil. He breathed, his steady face paling slightly. Joe was not easily shaken. You're sure it was Bernice? Emma's note said, Grandma. And think about it, Joe. Kathy doesn't have the spine, and she certainly doesn't have the connections to pull off a felony of this magnitude. This is Bernice's play. She's been trying to get full custody of Emma since the divorce. She thinks I'm not good enough. Never was. This wasn't just spite, this was a complete, calculated elimination. The police arrived, then 2 officers, then a detective, then more vehicles. The quiet street suddenly felt exposed and chaotic. I immediately identified myself to the first officer, and then to Detective Antonio Drew. Slept, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s, who looked like he'd seen every version of a bad story. Drew listened carefully as I explained everything. Maintaining the calm, professional demeanor I taught my senior chemistry class when a Bunsen burner flared too high. I presented Emma's note. I showed him my photographs. I explained Bernice's access to the house, her motive, and the timing. Mr. Vaughn, Drew said, his voice flat. I appreciate you calling this in. That was smart. But you understand this looks suspicious. A man calls us saying he found enough meth to supply a small city under his own bed. Of course it does. I responded, meeting his gaze evenly. That's the point. Someone wanted it to look suspicious. But ask yourself, detective, if these were my drugs, why would I call you? Why would I have timestamped photographs documenting their discovery? Why would my 7-year-old daughter have warned me about them? Drew nodded slowly, processing the logic. The logic of a man who didn't want the truth buried, but exposed. We'll need to take the bag into evidence. We'll need to process your home, and we'll need to talk to your daughter. Talk to her without her mother present. I insisted, the demand firm. And certainly without her grandmother. Bernice has been controlling that family for years. Emma was brave enough to warn me. Slept. Give her the chance to tell the truth, without her manipulator in the room. The detective studied me again. You seem very calm for a man who just found meth in his house. I teach chemistry to teenagers, detective. I said. A faint, bitter smile touching my lips. Staying calm during chaos is a survival skill. But make no mistake, I'm furious. Someone tried to destroy my life and traumatize my child. I want justice. They processed the scene for hours. Joseph stayed with me. His own camera documenting the police documenting the scene. A vital layer of independent proof. They logged the drugs, tagged them, and removed them. They searched the entire house with my permission, finding nothing else. The air in my bedroom, once a space of quiet routine, now felt invaded, hostile. Finally, around midnight, Detective Drew approached me on the porch, where Joseph and I sat nursing bad instant coffee. Mr. Vaughn, we're done for tonight. Don't leave town. We'll be in touch. He paused. Off the record, I've been doing this 20 years. Your story makes sense. The evidence supports it. But we need to prove it. What about your daughter? Will you interview her? We'll coordinate with Child Protective Services. Given the allegations, they'll want to be involved. We'll be talking to everyone involved. The police left. The quiet returned, but it was a heavier, more toxic silence. Joseph immediately got up to make better coffee, while I sat at my kitchen table, Emma's note spread in front of me. You're gonna fight this, Joseph stated, handing me a steaming mug. It wasn't a question. I'm gonna end this. I corrected him. The anger in my chest hardening into something cold and solid. Bernice has been poisoning my relationship with my daughter for 3 years. Convince Kathy to divorce me. Convince the judge I was an unfit father because I worked 2 jobs to pay for Emma's private school. She's had her way too long. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. But Bernice Wright made a mistake tonight. She involved Emma. My daughter risked everything to warn me. I'm going to find out how she got those drugs, where they came from, and I'm going to make sure she pays for every ounce of pain she's tried to cause. Every moment of fear she put in my little girl's heart. You'll need help. I know. Will you help me? What kind of question is that? Of course. I managed a small, grim smile. The initial shock was over. The game had begun. Now, we had to figure out how Bernice Wright, the wealthy socialite, got her hands on 20 pounds of methamphetamine. The cold, controlled calculation had begun. The silence without Emma was deafening, amplified by the heavy, intrusive memory of the police processing my small home. The weekend passed in a blur of anxiety. No word from Kathy. I didn't dare call and risk upsetting Emma or giving Bernice any leverage. I spent Saturday researching, documenting, and preparing a defense, treating my life like a complex, failing experiment that had to be stabilized. Sunday morning, Joseph arrived with fresh pastries and his laptop. He set up shop at my kitchen table, a calm eye in the center of my personal storm. I did some digging, he said, pushing a steaming cup of coffee toward me. Bernice Wright isn't just a wealthy widow. Her late husband, Robert Wright, owned Wright Commercial Properties, warehouses, storage facilities, a few shady rental properties. She inherited the whole portfolio 15 years ago. I leaned over his shoulder, reading the public records he had pulled. My chemistry teacher's mind, accustomed to patterns and data, devoured the information. 3 of those properties have been flagged in police reports over the years. Joseph continued, scrolling down the screen. Nothing ever stuck. But there were investigations. Suspected drug activity at a warehouse in 2019. Illegal gambling at a storage facility in 2021. She's connected. Jake. I felt the last fragments of my emotional control give way to cold, hard focus. She has criminal connections. And she has a key to my house. Looks like it. And get this, one of her current tenants is a guy named Andrew Gillespie. Arrested twice for drug trafficking, never convicted, currently rents a warehouse from Bernice in the industrial district. I traced the name on the screen. Andrew Gillespie. The connection was too clean, too sharp to be a coincidence. Bernice had used her legitimate real estate business as a shield and a source. Do you think she got the drugs from him? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I think it's worth investigating. It gives Detective Drew a solid lead that points away from you and directly at her business dealings. This isn't just a family feud anymore. This is organized crime touching your life. Monday morning, I went to work, ignoring the frantic advice of Arnold Yates, my court-appointed attorney. Arnold had called Sunday evening after Detective Drew contacted him. Jake, this is serious, Arnold had stressed. Even though you called it in, possession charges could still be filed, and custody-wise, CPS will investigate. They might suspend your visitation until this is resolved. The thought of not seeing Emma made the air catch in my throat. But I kept my voice level. Then we prove it fast. At school, I went through the motions of teaching. In my first period AP chemistry class, the students were discussing reaction rates, and I half listened while my mind worked the problem like a complex equation. Bernice had motive. Eliminating me meant full control of Emma. She had accessed the key Kathy must have given her. She had opportunity the window when Emma was with me. And now, she had a supplier, Andrew Gillespie. During the lunch period, my phone buzzed. Detective Drew. My heart hammered against my ribs, a sudden, frantic rhythm. Mr. Vaughn. We interviewed your daughter this morning, with a Child Protective Services worker present. No parents in the room. I closed my eyes in relief, holding my breath. She confirmed her grandmother was at your residence Thursday morning. Drew continued. Said Bernice told her to stay in the living room, watching cartoons, while she put something away, in Daddy's room. Your daughter got worried because Grandma seemed nervous. Sneaky, she said. A wave of pure gratitude, sharp and intense, washed over me. Thank you. Thank you for believing her. We're pursuing this as a potential frame job now, Drew confirmed. But Mr. Vaughn, I need to ask, do you have any idea where your ex-mother-in-law might have obtained methamphetamine? Actually, Detective, I might. Can I share some information my friend discovered? I told him about the properties, about Andrew Gillespie, and about the pattern of suspicious investigations linked to Wright commercial properties. Drew was silent for a long moment. That's interesting. Very interesting. Let me look into this. He paused, his voice softening slightly, though remaining formal. In the meantime, your visitation is suspended pending the Child Protective Services investigation. I'm sorry. The words hit like a physical blow. A sudden vacuum of absence. I'd expected them, but the finality still hurt. I understand. Mr. Vaughn. Your daughter asked the social worker to give you a message. What message? Tell Daddy I'm sorry I couldn't hide it better. She tried to move the bag. Apparently couldn't lift it, so she left you the note instead. My vision blurred. My 7-year-old girl had physically tried to protect me, had risked her own safety to save me. The anger that had been cold and hard suddenly burned, fueled by a fierce, protective instinct. After school, I drove to the industrial district, to the address Joseph had found, warehouse number 347. I didn't get close, just parked across the street with a pair of binoculars watching. Nothing happened for 2 hours. Then, a black SUV pulled up. A man got out, mid-30s, muscular, moving with the casual, intimidating confidence of someone involved in illicit dealings. He unlocked the warehouse and went inside. I took photos. Time-stamped. I started a file on my phone. This was just the beginning. The emotional shift was complete. The passive, guarded man was gone. In his place was a father who had been pushed past the point of return. I had been denied access to my daughter, and now, my focus was solely on dismantling the woman who had tried to take everything. The following days were consumed by two things: the deafening silence without Emma, and Joseph's persistent, meticulous research. The suspension of my visitation rights had been like cutting the oxygen line to my heart. My life, once defined by the predictable rhythms of my classes and the brief, precious moments with Emma, now felt like a high-tension wire, waiting for a spark. Tuesday morning, Kathy finally called. The minute I answered, her shrill, stressed voice pierced the quiet of my duplex. Jake, what the hell did you tell the police? They're saying my mother planted drugs in your house. That's insane. Isaac. I kept my own voice calm, professional, using the detached tone I usually reserved for deflecting a student's weak excuse for a late assignment. Your mother was in my house without permission, Kathy. Emma confirmed it. The police found methamphetamine. What exactly do you think happened? I think you're trying to frame my mother because you're bitter about the divorce. I called the police myself. I have time-stamped evidence. And our daughter, our 7-year-old daughter, warned me. She saw Bernice put something in my room. Do you really think I'm making this up, Kathy? Silence. A long, brittle silence that eventually broke with a quiet, shaky admission. Mother said, she was just checking on Emma, making sure you were taking care of her properly. Be hiding felony quantities of drugs under my bed. I pressed. She wouldn't do that. Kathy, listen to yourself. Your mother has controlled every aspect of your life since we met. She hated me from day one because I wasn't rich enough. She convinced you to divorce me. She fought for maximum custody. And now, she's tried to frame me for drug possession to eliminate me completely. You don't have to believe me, but the police do. They have evidence. And Kathy, I paused, letting the steel in my voice cut through her denial. If you continue protecting her, you're going to lose Emma. 2. Child Protective Services is investigating. They want to know if you were complicit. I wasn't. I didn't know anything about this. Then help them. Tell them the truth about your mother's control, about how she got access to my house, about her real estate properties, and the people she associates with. Another long silence, heavier this time. I need to think. Think fast. Our daughter is caught in the middle of this. She hung up. I sat in my empty kitchen, staring at the wall where Emma's drawings were taped. Butterflies, rainbows, stick figures of the two of us holding hands. The fury was potent, but directed now. It was a fuel, not a fire. My phone buzzed again. Joseph. Jake. You need to see something. I've been digging deeper into Bernice's finances. She's been moving money. Lots of it, through shell companies. Offshore accounts. This is bigger than just the drug she planted. I think she's laundering money. I opened my laptop immediately and started reading the documents Joseph had compiled. He had been thorough. Bank records, pulled from public filings, property transfers, business licenses. Bernice Wright had her fingers in a dozen different enterprises. All of them cash-heavy storage facilities, laundromats, car washes. Classic money laundering setups. And every single one of them was rented to people with criminal records. An idea began forming. Dangerous, bordering on illegal, but effective. If Bernice wanted to play dirty, I could play dirtier. I just needed to be smarter about it. I needed to use her own arrogance against her. I called Detective Drew. Detective, I think we need to talk about Bernice Wright's business dealings. I believe the drugs in my house are connected to a much larger operation. Wednesday, I met with Detective Drew and a man introduced as Frederick Sutton, an FBI agent. Sutton was younger, intense, and clearly very interested in what I had to say. Mr. Vaughn, you're suggesting your ex-mother-in-law is involved in organized crime, Sutton stated, his voice skeptical but alert. I'm suggesting her properties are being used for criminal activity, and she's either complicit or actively participating. I replied, spreading Joseph's research across the conference table. Look at the pattern. Multiple properties, all cash businesses. All rented to individuals with criminal records, money moving through shell companies. And somehow, she had access to distribution, level quantities of methamphetamine. Sutton studied the documents. This is good work. Who compiled this? A friend. A physics teacher. He's good with data. We've actually had Bernice Wright on our radar. Sutton admitted, surprising me. Nothing concrete enough to pursue, though. But if we can prove she planted those drugs, we can leverage that to investigate the larger operation. What do you need from me? Your cooperation. Your testimony and patience. Building a case takes time. I don't have time, I said, the words cutting off his sentence. My daughter is with that woman right now. Child Protective Services is monitoring the situation. But is that safe? My daughter is 7 years old, living with a woman who planted drugs to frame me. Who's teaching her to keep secrets? To be afraid? Drew leaned forward, his expression showing a flicker of empathy. We understand your frustration, Mr. Vaughn, but you need to let us do our jobs. I wanted to argue, to demand faster action, but I swallowed the emotion. I had laid the groundwork. I had provided the target. Fine. I nodded. But I'm not sitting idle. I'm going to keep looking. Just don't do anything illegal, Sutton warned. We can't use evidence obtained through illegal means. Of course not. I met his eyes, allowing myself a small, innocent smile. I'm a high school teacher. I follow the rules. I didn't need them to know I was planning to break every rule necessary to protect my daughter. Drew and the FBI agent, Sutton, warned me not to do anything illegal, but seeing that letter confirming the suspension of my visitation felt like watching a countdown clock. I was out of time. Every day Emma spent under Bernice's influence was another day her mind was being poisoned. Another day she might be made to feel guilty for saving me. My focus sharpened. The professional calm I usually maintained cracking, just enough to reveal the deep-seated fear and anger underneath. Bernice had chosen to fight with criminal malice. I would respond with calculated ruthlessness. Thursday, I drove back to the industrial district. Back to warehouse number 347, rented by Andrew Gillespie from Wright Commercial Properties. I spent the afternoon there, documenting the flow of vehicles, the shift changes, the subtle indicators of illicit activity that an ordinary neighbor might miss. The black SUV I'd seen earlier returned, and I watched the men move with practiced efficiency, confirming that this was not a simple storage facility. It was a hub. Tuesday morning, I had managed to break Kathy's denial, but not her fear. I knew that before I could dismantle Bernice's empire, I needed to completely isolate her. That evening, Joseph came over, his expression grim as he laid out his latest findings on Bernice's financial structures. Look at this, he said, pointing to a complex web of transactions. She's using 3 different shell companies, registered in Delaware, to funnel money from the storage facilities and the car washes. It's the classic smurfing setup, breaking large illicit payments into smaller, legitimate-looking deposits. This is not just a landlord looking the other way, Jake. This is active high-level money laundering. The sheer scope of her operation was staggering, confirming that the drugs planted under my bed were merely disposable collateral in a much bigger game. Bernice's empire was vast, but its foundation was built on corruption, making it fundamentally unstable. I need to get inside that warehouse, I said, the thought escaping before I could fully vet it. Joseph looked up, his wisdom etched in the lines around his eyes. Absolutely not. Sutton warned you. Any evidence you get illegally is inadmissible. You go in there, you risk prison for yourself, and then who saves Emma? The police are moving too slow. They have to follow procedure. I have to create an undeniable crisis that forces them to act immediately. They need something they can't ignore, something public. I knew Joe was right about the legality, but the urgency outweighed the risk. The fear of prison was superseded by the necessity of immediate action to save Emma. That night, I drove back to the industrial district. Same warehouse. This time, I waited until late, past midnight. The black SUV was there along with 2 other vehicles. Lights were on inside. But the decision was no longer intellectual. It was visceral. I was done waiting for the system that had already failed me once. I grabbed my phone, set it to video, and climbed out of my car, the cold metal of the door handle a grounding presence in the dark. The warehouse had windows high up on the side. Around the back, I found a large industrial dumpster I could climb onto. The smell of stale grease and damp cardboard was heavy, but I ignored it. From the top of the dumpster, I could just see inside. Through my phone's camera, I recorded everything. Pallets stacked high with plastic, wrapped packages. Andrew Gillespie and two other men, counting mountains of cash on a steel table, the bills spilling over. A woman I didn't recognize, but who looked like a manager, supervising the process. And then, I saw it. In the corner, clearly visible in the harsh industrial light, was a stack of black duffel bags. They were identical, every single seam and strap, to the one found under my bed. My hands trembled, but I kept the camera steady, recording the crucial 5 minutes of footage that showed the operation, the cash, the products, and the signature bags. Then voices approached outside. I climbed down fast, quiet as a shadow, adrenaline pumping. I got back to my car and sped away before anyone saw me. I had the evidence. Real, undeniable, direct evidence of Burness's criminal network. Sutton was right. I had obtained it illegally. The FBI couldn't use it, but I could. I spent the next morning creating a plan. The video, the clear, damning footage of $1 million drug and cash operation. I sent anonymously to the local news station, Channel 7, with a cryptic tip about criminal activity at Wright Commercial Properties. No mention of Burness. Nothing that could be traced back to me. Just the address, the footage, and a suggestion that they investigate a massive operation happening right under their noses. Then I waited. I had chosen to cross the line, and I would not apologize for it. Sometimes, you had to break the rules to ensure justice prevailed, especially when your 7-year-old daughter was the reason for the fight. I had the evidence, illegally obtained, but powerful enough to create a legal earthquake. Friday morning, the story broke. Local warehouse suspected in drug operation. Channel 7 played my video. Blurred just enough to protect their anonymous source, but Andrew Gillespie's face was clearly recognizable. The report did the warehouse, immediately to Wright Commercial Properties. I watched the segment in the quiet of my living room, feeling a rush of grim satisfaction. I had forced the issue. My phone rang before noon. Detective Drew. Mr. Vaughn. Did you send that video to Channel 7? His voice was low, laced with frustration, but also grudging admiration. I don't know what you're talking about, Detective. I replied, maintaining the fiction with perfect composure. Well, thanks to that video, we have probable cause for a warrant. We're hitting the warehouse this afternoon. Thought you'd want to know. I hope you find what you're looking for. I'm sure we will. And Mr. Vaughn, he paused, the warning implicit. Don't do anything else stupid. Let us handle this from here. Absolutely, Detective. I hung up and allowed myself a small smile. Sometimes you had to bend the rules to get justice when the person you were fighting operated entirely outside them. That evening, the local news reported the raid. Major drug bust at local warehouse. 3 men arrested, including property tenant Andrew Gillespie. The investigation would follow the money, the drugs, the connections, and all roads would inevitably lead back to Burness Wright. I just had to be patient now. The criminal machine was finally in motion. Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. It was Kathy. She stood on my porch, mascara streaked, trembling, looking smaller and more fragile than I had ever seen her. Can I come in? I stepped aside. She entered like she was walking into a stranger's house, which, I supposed, she was. We hadn't been alone together since the divorce was finalized nearly 3 years ago. Jake. She swallowed hard, struggling to find a voice that wasn't choked with emotion. I'm so sorry. For all of it. The divorce. Letting mother control everything. Not believing you about the drugs. She sat heavily on my couch. The place Bernice had helped ensure she would never sit again. The police came to the house yesterday. They questioned mother for hours. She lawyered up immediately. Clifford Whittaker himself showed up. They asked me about her properties, about whether I knew about her tenants, about whether I'd ever seen drugs or suspicious activity. Kathy looked up at me, her eyes red. Jake, I had no idea. I swear I didn't know. Didn't know, or didn't want to know. She flinched. Both. Maybe. Mother always said she was just managing Daddy's old properties, that the tenants were difficult, but she couldn't legally evict them. I never questioned it. I never questioned a lot of things. I know. Her voice broke. I let her poison me against you. She kept saying you didn't care about Emma, that you were always working, that you'd never provide the life Emma deserved. And I listened. God. Jake. I'm so sorry. I sat across from her, maintaining a careful distance. The emotion emanating from her was genuine. But I needed to understand her motivation now. Why are you here, Kathy? Child Protective Services came, too. They interviewed me without mother present. They asked about Emma, about our home environment, about mother's influence. She wiped her eyes. They're recommending Emma be placed with you. Full custody. They're saying my home environment is unstable and potentially dangerous because of mother. My heart leaped, a sudden, fierce spike of triumph. But I kept my expression neutral. And what do you think? I think they're right. I think Emma needs to be with you. I think I failed her as a mother by letting my mother run my life. She met my eyes, and for the first time in years, I saw the genuine person beneath Bernice's influence. I'm not fighting this, Jake. I'm going to agree to the custody change. And I'm going to testify against mother if the police need me to. That's a big step. She tried to destroy you, Kathy said, a new, steely resolve entering her voice. She tried to take Emma away from both of us. You with prison, me with Child Protective Services. She's been using my daughter as a pawn. I'm done being controlled. We talked for an hour. Kathy explained that Bernice had indeed given her a key to my place, claiming she needed to check on things occasionally. Kathy confessed she'd been weak, afraid of her mother's disapproval, desperate for her financial approval. Bernice had been paying for everything. The house, the car, Emma's school, and had used that financial control as leverage. She threatened to cut me off if I ever reconciled with you. She wanted you completely out of our lives because you weren't good enough, and because she wanted Emma all to herself. After Kathy left, I called Arnold Yates with the news. If Kathy agrees to the custody change, and Child Protective Services recommends it, we can file for modification immediately, Arnold said, excitement in his voice. This could happen fast, Jake. How fast? Emergency hearing within 2 weeks. If the judge agrees, Emma could be with you full time by the end of the month. The end of the month was 12 days away. I had won the personal battle. Emma was coming home. I felt the weight of the last 3 years lift, replaced by a consuming desire to finish the job and ensure Bernice could never hurt us again. Emma was home. That Friday, Kathy brought her over with 2 suitcases and a stuffed elephant Emma had owned since she was a baby. Be good for Daddy, Kathy said, hugging her tight. I'll see you next weekend. Okay. Emma nodded, then ran to me, wrapping her arms tightly around my neck. I missed you, Daddy. I missed you too, baby, so much. The emergency custody hearing had restored the most important piece of my life. But Bernice Wright was free on $2 million bail. Justice had begun, but it was far from finished. I told Joseph, I'm going to give the FBI everything they need to destroy her completely. And I'm going to do it in a way that leaves no doubt about who's responsible. That sounds dangerous. Joseph responded, sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by documents. Probably. But she tried to take Emma from me. She tried to send me to prison. Danger is relative at this point. I knew Bernice was arrogant. She believed her money and connections made her untouchable. She'd operated for years without consequence, and she'd grown careless. That carelessness was going to be her downfall. I spent 2 weeks preparing. Joseph and I cataloged every piece of evidence we had gathered: financial records, property documents, tenant lists, police reports. I created a comprehensive, meticulously organized file showing the full scope of Bernice's 12-property criminal operation. All the money laundering through car washes and storage facilities. All the protection payments. I packaged it beautifully. Printed, indexed, and delivered it anonymously to Frederick Sutton at the FBI. This was the foundation. For the real revenge, I needed to hit Bernice where she'd feel it most: her reputation, her wealth, her control. I started with her reputation. Using contacts from former students who had gone into journalism, tech, and law, I began leaking information. Not to the mainstream media directly, but to social media, blog posts, and online crime communities. I created a narrative: wealthy widow, secret criminal empire. The story spread organically. People love a scandal involving the wealthy, especially one involving a frame-up in a 7-year-old girl. Within days, Bernice's name was trending locally. News stations picked it up. Reporters started investigating on their own, finding connections Joseph and I had missed. Bernice Wright became synonymous with corruption. Next, the wealth. I couldn't directly access her money, but I could make sure others did. I sent an anonymous tip to the Internal Revenue Service about the massive discrepancies in Bernice's tax filings, pointing them toward the offshore accounts and shell companies. This led directly to an immediate audit. State regulatory agencies received complaints about every single one of her commercial properties: building code violations, safety hazards, illegal modifications. Every building she owned became a target of official investigation. Insurance companies received information about fraudulent claims she had filed over the years. Banks received evidence of the money laundering schemes. I methodically dismantled her empire piece by piece, using the system against her. Finally, control. This was personal. I approached every tenant in Bernice's property and offered them a deal: testify against her in exchange for help relocating. I used a portion of my meager savings to provide moving assistance and connected them with legal aid for criminal defense. I gave them a way out of her web. Most took it. The ones who refused, I made sure the police knew about their illegal activities. They would either testify or they would go down with her. Within a month, Bernice's organization was collapsing. Tenants fled, properties were seized in raids, the Internal Revenue Service froze her accounts, and her mansion went into foreclosure. And through it all, I made sure she knew it was me. I sent her a letter: simple, typed, and untraceable. You tried to take my daughter. Instead, you lost everything. This is justice. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. She'd know. She would sit in her rapidly emptying mansion, watching her life crumble, knowing exactly who was responsible. Monday brought the inevitable news. Andrew Gillespie was cooperating with the police. He admitted Bernice Wright was his landlord and implied she knew about his activities. giving them financial records showing payments to her that exceeded the rent by substantial amounts. Protection money, he called it. Tuesday, the FBI raided 3 more of Bernice's properties. 2 additional arrests. Wednesday, Bernice, arrested at her home on charges of conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine, money laundering, and attempted framing of evidence. Bail was set at $2 million. She posted it within hours, Clifford Whittaker arranging everything. She was defiant, still believing her wealth was a shield. But the shield was full of holes, and the trial would be the final, fatal blow. I had been patient, intelligent, and relentless. She had tried to destroy me. Instead, I had systematically destroyed her. The law would handle the criminal charges. But I had already delivered the revenge. The trial, 8 months in the making, felt less like a courtroom drama and more like a final summation of all my calculated actions. 8 months of preparation, investigation, and the systematic destruction of Bernice Wright's life. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Andrew Gillespie testified, detailing Bress's role as his landlord and protector. A dozen other tenants testified. Financial experts detailed the complex money laundering. Police presented the evidence from the warehouse raids. Then Emma testified. I sat in the gallery, watching my now 8-year-old daughter tell the judge what she'd seen that Thursday morning. How Grandma had told her to watch television. How she'd heard Grandma in Daddy's room. How Grandma had seemed nervous when she came out. Why did you write your father a note? The prosecutor asked gently. Because Grandma was being sneaky, and she doesn't like Daddy. I thought she might be doing something bad. Were you scared to tell him? Emma nodded. Grandma says people who tell family secrets are traitors. But Daddy needed to know. The defense attorney, Clifford Whittaker, tried to discredit her, painting her as a confused child, coached by a vengeful father. But Emma held firm. My brave girl. Kathy testified, too, admitting her mother's control, the financial leverage, and the manipulation that had fractured our family. She had been in therapy since Emma moved in with me, finally working through years of abuse. She was stronger, clearer, and truly a better mother now. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. The verdict came back guilty on all counts. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Mills, the same judge who had granted me custody, presided. Mrs. Wright, Judge Mills said, her voice stern, slept. You have used your wealth and position to engage in a criminal enterprise that has damaged this community and endangered lives. Most egregiously, you attempted to frame an innocent man to steal his child. That child is your own granddaughter, whom you claim to love. Instead of nurturing her, you traumatized her. Instead of protecting her father, you tried to destroy him. You have shown no remorse, no recognition of the harm you've caused. Bernice stood straight, defiant even now, her face pale but her expression unyielding. I sentence you to 20 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for 15 years. The gavel came down, the sound echoing through the silenced courtroom. Bernice was 73 years old. She'd be 88 before she could even apply for parole. She would die in prison. I felt Emma's hand slip into mine. She had insisted on being here for the sentencing, and Kathy had agreed. Is it over? Daddy. It's over, baby. We walked out of the courthouse together, Emma between Kathy and me. The 3 of us were united for the first time in years. The sun was shining. Spring flowers bloomed in the courthouse garden. Emma ran ahead, chasing a butterfly. Thank you, Kathy said softly, her voice filled with sincere gratitude. For not giving up on her. She's my daughter. I'll never give up on her. I know that now. She paused. Jake, I know we can't go back. Too much has happened. But maybe we can be better going forward. As co-parents, as allies. I'd like that. She smiled, tentative, genuine, and followed Emma toward the parking lot. I stood there for a moment, feeling the immense weight lift. The anger, the fear, the desperate need for revenge, all of it dissipating like morning fog. Bernice Wright had tried to destroy me. Instead, I'd survived, grown stronger, gotten my daughter back, and made sure justice was served, not just through the courts, but through the systematic dismantling of everything she'd built on corruption and cruelty. She'd lost her freedom, her fortune, her family, and her legacy. I'd won everything that mattered. A year later, life had settled into a comfortable routine. Emma was thriving, straight A's, lots of friends, happy. Kathy and I had developed a functional co-parenting relationship. She had Emma every other weekend now. Joseph and I were having coffee one Saturday morning while Emma was at her mom's place. You ever think about what you did? Joseph asked. The revenge thing. Sometimes. Sometimes. Why? No regrets. I considered it. I destroyed a woman's life methodically, deliberately. I used every tool at my disposal to make sure she lost everything. So, yes, sometimes I wonder if I went too far. But then I remember what she tried to do. She tried to send me to prison. She tried to take Emma. She manipulated and controlled my daughter for years. And she would have kept doing it if I hadn't stopped her. She made the choice to plant those drugs. Every consequence that followed was her fault. Not mine. You sound certain. I am. I didn't break any laws in ways that mattered. I just made sure the laws that existed were enforced. I made sure the truth came out. That's not revenge. That's aggressive justice. She earned it. We finished our coffee in comfortable silence. Then Joseph smiled. You know what the best part is? What? And Emma. She's incredible. Smart, brave, kind. Bernice tried to turn her into a pawn, but instead she turned into a hero. She saved you, and you saved her right back. He was right. Emma was my victory. Not the trial. Not Bernice's imprisonment. Not the satisfaction of watching her empire crumble. Emma, laughing in the sunshine, doing homework at my kitchen table. Safe and loved and free. That was the real revenge. Building a life so good that Bernice's worst efforts couldn't touch it. That evening, Emma came home with stories about her weekend with Kathy. They'd gone to ice cream, watched movies. Kathy was doing better, really better. She'd moved out of her mother's mansion, gotten her own apartment, started working again. Mom says Grandma's lawyer keeps trying to appeal. Emma mentioned casually while setting the table for dinner. That's true, but it won't work. The evidence is solid. Good. I don't want her to get out. She won't. Not for a long time. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, Daddy. Did you make her go to jail? I knelt down to her level. The judge made her go to jail because she broke the law. I just made sure people knew the truth about what she'd done. Is that why you were working so hard last year? All that research with Mr. Law. My daughter was too perceptive. Yes, I wanted to make sure she couldn't hurt anyone else. Emma hugged me. I'm glad you did. She was mean. She was, but she can't be mean to us anymore. We ate dinner together. Spaghetti, Emma's favorite. Afterwards, we watched a movie, and Emma fell asleep on the couch halfway through. I carried her to bed, tucked her in, and kissed her forehead. Love you, Daddy. She mumbled, half asleep. Love you, too, baby. Always. The lavender paint of her bedroom glowed softly under the nightlight. I stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her sleep peacefully. No nightmares, no fear. Just a little girl, safe in her room, in her home, with her father who would never stop protecting her. Bernice Wright had gambled everything on destroying me. She'd lost. I'd won not through violence or cruelty, but through patience, intelligence, and an unwavering commitment to protecting what mattered most. Bernice would spend the next 15 years, probably the rest of her life, in prison, thinking about what she'd lost: her freedom, her wealth, her granddaughter. Meanwhile, I'd spend those years watching Emma grow up, teaching her, loving her, being the father she deserved. That was justice. That was victory. And it was enough. I had won.